See that in there? There's a liner to this hat. Hear that? I've got a bump cap. Hey, good morning. This is Joel Walsman, CEO and Master Electrician of Jefferson Electric. I'm excited about our project today because we are out behind our shop working on our off-grid facility. This thing is probably built in the 50s. It's a steel structure building. It needs a lot of TLC, and today we're bringing the wiring up to optimal standards for the use that we have intended for this facility. And that use is off-grid projects. By off-grid, we mean everything that does not have a utility interconnection. Remote cabins, RVs, travel vans, sailboats, things of that nature that are going to utilize solar plus battery storage systems for remote energy, boondocking, independence, wild living. It's going to be fun. So this facility will accommodate us bringing customer vehicles indoors where they're safe and secure, it's dry, it's warm, and then we'll have all of our tools, equipment, and materials at our disposal. So unlike typical projects for Jefferson Electric where we're coming to you, the customer, this time you're coming to us. You're bringing your mobile vehicle to us and we're fully equipping it here with independent energy systems. Let's take a look. So we are going to give this a total facelift, inside and out. All the insulation's coming out. Outside gets new steel siding to match the shop. It'll look good. New gutters, downspouts, fascia, and then inside, we're gonna spray foam. After wiring, we're gonna spray foam with 3 inches of foam. That should give us an R19, and then we're going to put metal pan all around the inside. Probably the same siding that's on the outside, but potentially a more cost-effective version so that we've got a good finish, clean look. That's part of our consideration in how we're going to execute the wiring, is what is the interior finish and how do we play nicely with it. So the layout here is we're going to have customer vehicles pulling in this garage door. We've got the most vertical space here. That wall space right there, all of that is going to be workbench. We're going to have an AC to DC rectifier. That AC to DC rectifier is pretty cool. This is all future. I'll take you through the project, but that's cool in that we have to have a power source in order to commission the systems. So these mobile systems that are going to be going out to customer premises or on customer property, mobile property, we're going to commission them on the workbench so that wiring connections are made in the proper configuration, series, parallel, battery systems, and then commissioned off-grid power before being installed on the customer vehicle. And so we're doing more work in a controlled environment on the workbench where you've got physical space. If troubleshooting is involved, so there it is. Lots of power on this wall, lots of equipment, cord reels, light reels, so that we can just surround the vehicle with power and energy and light and execute quickly. The rest of the shop pretty much is storage space for equipment. We like to have staging space, so we've got the equipment in hand for upcoming projects about 5 to 6 business days in advance. So we're beating the shipping cycle in case there's snow delays, etc. The most expensive components, single component of this entire operation is labor. So what lots of this shop is going to do is going to allow us to secure materials, to have them staged, palletized on a customer by customer basis so that we've got projects, again, 5 working days in advance of when we actually need them, project materials, and we're securing a work pipeline for our skilled labor to execute on those projects. So here are a couple examples of the type of client that we're going to serve in this space. Somebody who works remotely, right? Which is like 50% of the United States at this point, and they want the freedom to see the country, and their spouse either does work remotely or does not, but they've purchased a retired travel van of sorts, maybe like a FedEx delivery, high top Sprinter. They've purchased a discounted vehicle. They're outfitting it with interior finishes. They're tracking with a couple vloggers on how to do that. And now they need energy independence so that they can be in remote portions of Utah, Nevada, looking at the scenery, and in working remotely with cell boosters and things of that nature. They come to us and we equip them with energy independence for climate controls. toilets, cooking, all of these basic essentials of life are dependent on the energy system. So that's one. Two, high profile client, maybe a client that needs a little bit of getaway, a little bit of retreat space, like an off-grid cabin in the woods, a remote piece of property. They work a high profile, high stress job in the city, and this is their retreat space. And they're gonna invest in solar plus batteries with us because the cost of getting utility transmission power out to them could have a base cost of $10,000 or $20,000 depending on the distance between utility infrastructure that's existing and the desired retreat location of choice. And so if you pivot that $20,000 investment plus monthly bills into an upfront energy independent situation, now there is a cost-effective situation. So this is our first year to launch Jefferson Electric off-grid, and we anticipate this year we'll do $500,000 in business. That's our projection, with about 1.5 team members doing high-cost installation. So there is a lot of material cost, so that's not just all fun money, guys, come on. But we anticipate by year 5 that this division alone will be a $10 million division because there is so much demand and there is not the skill set to serve that market. To our knowledge, at least in our part of the country, not the city, not the state, our part of the country, this service does not exist. One of the things I like to do on a larger project like this is prefab. Prefab is golden, and with metallic boxes, prefab is also necessary. Now you'll see you've got an array of knockouts, 12 around the perimeter. They come in 1/2 inch and 3/4 inch nominal trade size. That would be actual 7/8 and 1 1/8 equivalent. So what we're doing is we're face screwing the boxes to the metal framing, and we're bringing the MC cable in the backside. That's gonna give us a good, clean finish look and easy install once we put the finished materials on the face of this wall. So I'm just literally gonna lay out my electrical boxes. I'm gonna use my lineman's pliers. Oh, that should have been easier. To knock out the 1/2 inch, grab and twist out, throw it in the trash box. So we have 2 types of MC cable connectors. We have the double connector. Spin the lock nut off. I like sticking my finger in it. That just keeps me from dropping the small parts. This double connector is gonna allow for wire entry for 2 cables. That's an in and an out, a line side and a load side. So I'm literally just gonna spin that on there. I'm not too concerned about the orientation of that. There we go. So now I can bring 2 cables in the backside. That's gonna give me a good clean finish. Here's the single connector, and they're different types. They're bullet style connectors, but you are gonna pay a little bit more for those. I like how tight and right this traditional style connector is. It's just so snug. And the bullet style connector sometimes kind of just gives a wiggle. I like that firm mechanical connection. I'm gonna take my lineman's, I'm gonna give it that last 1/16 of an inch twist to make sure it's snug on there, and I'm good to go. The other element of prefab is this, the little metal screw. It's green, and it pops right into that raised portion of the box right there, and this green ground screw is required by code to make a firm electrical connection from the ground wire to the box. See, everything that's substantial in metal in the electrical system and the building structure gets grounded. So we're gonna be grounding, we're gonna be bonding to the building steel in this shop and to all the boxes, and the jacket of the cable, the metal jacket, is going to be continuously and firmly, securely connected, and that's going to be by this metal clamp. So all of that's very intentional to ensure a good, safe grounding path through the entire electrical system, and again, to the building system as well. All right, I've got my trusty folding rule here. We're 44 inches from the bottom of the box to finished floor, and this concrete is our finished floor. And then this box is the end of a line. So I want to use the single connector version. We've got fairly heavy steel here, so we'll find out whether we have to pre-drill it or if we can just put a self-tapper into it. In fact, we'll use 2 or 3 to hold it. What I've got is, I was very intentional requesting from our warehousing team, 5/16 hex head self-tapping screws. They're just going to get a lot better grab for drilling the steel than a Phillips head screw, for instance, so I can apply more pressure with more confidence, and that thing's not going to spin out under that pressure. So line it up with the mark. Oh, that worked. That was a good bite. Real good bite. Boom! There, super solid. So this is going to be a dedicated 20 amp circuit to this particular outlet right here. It's going to have a retractable extension cord and a retractable LED work light that's going to be able to service the vehicles and the personnel working on the vehicles really nicely. We're going to rinse and repeat this process all the way around the perimeter of the shop. Because we're utilizing spray foam and we're applying a finished surface to the shop for a clean, bright appearance. And side note, spray foam is not fire rated from the standpoint of it cannot be a finished exposed material. It needs to be covered with a fire barrier. So we're going to be complying with that standard. We're going to go ahead and run outlets all the way around the shop and provision for unknowns in the future by making sure our circuits are 20 amp. They're beefy, not more than 3 outlets per circuit. In this case, just because we want to have plenty of juice everywhere. All right, so this box, start to finish, this is a 20 amp dedicated circuit from the electrical panel, which will sit right here, being fed from a panel indoors at the main HQ. This is an essential tool for this project. This is an MC auto clamping cable stripper. I'm going to squeeze down on this lever, compress, and then I'm twist. And you can feel that cutting wheel and the resistance, and then it goes soft, gets easy. Now at that point, all you do is twist lefty-loosey and peel off the outer jacket. When I'm working, I like to have 2 things. One, a trash receptacle near at hand, so I don't have to pick the stuff up off the floor later. And 2, a cart. This is a smooth concrete floor, one continuous plane. I can just haul all my stuff with me as I move from receptacle to receptacle through the course of the project. This is a back saver, labor saver, time saver right here. So just a basic cart. I always throw it on the material lists when I'm estimating a job for the guys, and it's commercial or it's larger or there's a parking lot. Their truck's parked 100 feet from where they're working inside the building at a church or a school. Throw a cart on the material list. This 3-tier cart will hold everything that an electrician needs for, let's say, a day's work. All right, this little guy right here, anti-short bushing, absolutely necessary. I think you could get away without it by code, but why would you? Look at that. Slips right in there and protects the inner wiring from those sharp metal cut edges. That beauty, worth its weight in gold. It's not very heavy though. All right, so I'm coming in the back side of the box, slipping it in my clamp. That's probably DIY mistake number 1. No clamp in the box. Definitely install your clamp. I've opened up my clamp all the way, inserted my cable until I see that the anti-short bushing is flush to the mounting plane of the connector. And then I'm going to tighten down my set screws equally. I'm not going to over compress that wire. I just need it tight enough that the cable doesn't move in and out. All right, hey, here's a quick tip right here. See that in there? There's a liner to this hat. Hear that? I've got a bump cap. My friend put me onto this, Chris. This bump cap, or this ball cap at this point is threefold. It's serving 3 purposes. 1, bad hair day. 2, it keeps dust and debris out of my eyes, which really does make a big difference. Even with safety glasses and a kind of a tight fit there, man, metal shards, old rusty building like this. It's like working underneath a 1998 Ford F-150. It's just, you're just gonna get stuff in your face. It's rusty. And then thirdly, when I bump my head, it no longer hurts. If you're an electrician, you know what it's like to have lots of little minor cuts across your head from bumping into stuff in crawl space and the attics and the edge of ductwork. That hurts. This ball cap, it's everything I need for a job like this. So you might notice that I've run a 3-conductor cable into the box. The 3-conductor cable carries 3 current carrying conductors as well as a ground. So I've got black, red, white. I really only need these 3 at this point. The red is provisional and future. Just because the walls are going to be closed up, the cost of running 1 additional conductor, extremely minimal. But if at some point I want to split this off, each receptacle, each duplex receptacle into a dedicated 20 amp circuit as opposed to shared, I can easily do that without pulling any additional cable. Now, why wouldn't I do it now? 1, I think I've got plenty of power. 2, we are using GFCI protection in this shop. We could get away without it, but GFCI protection is for personnel protection in wet locations. And what we have to recognize is we're going to be pulling vehicles in and out of this space. Vehicles mean snow melt, water runoff. We're going to have water on the floor from time to time. If a customer delivers a vehicle while it's raining out, we just can't help it. And because of the amount of electricity we have, cord reels, light reels, things that'll be lying across the floor, we wanted to equip the entire space with GFCI protection. Instead of locating the GFCIs at the individual receptacles where they could get covered up by storage in the future, we've elected to spend the extra about $25 per GFCI protection and put it in the electrical panel. So we're going to use GFCI breakers instead of GFCI receptacles. And again, that's above and beyond what we'd be required by code to do in this space. So I'm taking my accessory wire, I'm tucking it back and out of the way. Now I'm taking my ground, which is nice and long. I'm going to do what's called a mid strip. I'm going to take my 12 gauge solid strip hole on my strippers, and I'm going to wrap it around that ground screw and pinch it down. I'm going to secure it to the box, make sure it stays in tight. And now I still have plenty of grounding conductor to do the mid-strip mechanism again. And an end strip here. Put the shepherd's hook on it. And now I'm ready to connect 2 receptacles. That also is going to function as the means to hold these receptacles in place while I'm wiring. 12 gauge copper wire is just so friendly to work with. Number 1, square drive, righty-tighty. That's the direction I wrap my wire, as well as the direction of twist. My shepherd's hook, again, to the right, always to the right, righty-tighty, everything to the right. Wire nuts, wire twists, terminal screws, there. Now my receptacles are going to hold themselves while I wire them up. Now, a neutral in a multi-wire branch circuit may not be dependent on a device connection. However, this is not a multi-wire branch circuit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut my wire right about in the middle here. Because of the device type I have, I'm not doing a mid-strip. I've got more than 3 inches of free wire from the face of the box, which is a code requirement. That's standard across all wiring situations, whether residential or commercial. I've got about ½ inch of wire stripped here, and that's different in this case than a standard receptacle because of the wiring method of these commercial receptacles. Now, let me differentiate. I don't like backstabs or shark bites, but these are not backstabs or shark bites. These, my friend, are an actual wiring clamp. So I'm going to insert my neutral wires. See, I stripped that too far, and now I've got some exposed neutral there. Not the end of the world, because obviously that will all remain exposed. But it's a bit more than what I want, so I'm going to trim it down and make it clean. There we go. So I've inserted my 2 neutrals, one into each slot as designed for this device. And I'm going to jump to the next device, insert my neutral, tighten it down, and this is actually a clamping plate that's closing on the wire and not a shark bite. A shark bite is where you just plug in or stab the wire and there's a clamp mechanism that springs and catches it, and it's just too flimsy and unreliable. I've fixed too many failed connections using that method. It's fast, it's cheap, it's quick, it's preferred by production electricians because it's fast and cheap and quick. But again, I've fixed quite a few failed connections. All right, so white goes to the silver screw, black to the brass screw, and now I've got 2 20 amp commercial outlets wired up, ready to be installed to the box. Now here's something that's kind of unique. With this wiring method, I'm actually going to remove the factory provided screws. I've got plenty of spare 632 screws, so I'm just going to throw them out, but you might start a stuff box of spare parts of this type if you plan on getting into it. And let me show you why. It has to do with the mounting style of the receptacles to the plates. I'm also going to break off that. You'll see that there's a brake line where it's intended to be removed for this exact purpose. So now I've got my receptacles down to their raw form. Double duplex plate. There we go. And all the little parts that are hard to handle with gloved hands. Come on. All right, now I'm using 2 screws. I'm really not good at this. These smaller screws with gloves in the cold, gonna end up dropping something. It's like doing public math. It's just not pretty. All right, so I've got the little provided nut. It's got teeth. And I'm gonna put those teeth into the back of the screw, and they're gonna bite into the back of the receptacle, through the mounting yoke of the receptacle and the faceplate. And I'll tell you what, here's a common mistake, one of the most common. It is a code requirement that a receptacle that is secured to the mounting plate of a box like this be secured with 2 screws, not 1. I was at the public library the other day, and I, out of curiosity, was watching the electricians that were at work, and I almost said something really cheeky because he was putting 1 screw through the center to secure the receptacle to the mounting plate. That's a shortcut. It's quick, but it's weak. There's not enough holding power there. That center hole is only intended when the cover plate is secured to the receptacle, not when the cover plate is securing the receptacle. So we're going to rinse and repeat what we did on top on the bottom. All right, snug everything down, make sure it's a good fit. Mounting screws of the 4 square double duplex raised cover. And we call these 4 squares. Some people call them 1900s or by their part name, but we call them 4 square J boxes. All right, now you want to tuck that wiring back in there. It is stiff. That box is a little bit full, but we're definitely within fill range. And just want to tuck, not stuff. Get a good fit, make sure nothing's pinched around the perimeter. Almost there. All right, that's a good tight fit. Everything about that is snug. We've got 3 mounting screws, boxed to steel framing. We've got 2 mounting screws per duplex receptacle, and then we've got 2 832 screws, steel on steel. That's not going anywhere. The last thing I want to do before moving on is I'm going to put in a jiffy clip within 18 inches of this box. So I'm just going to lay that wire out flat, and I'm going to put that jiffy clip right in there. That's going to secure my wiring in a neat and tidy, workmanlike manner. There it is. And then every 6 feet thereafter, with MC cable, the wiring is required to be secured and supported. I'm going to run it around through framing on the inside of the wall cavity to my electrical box, and that's the next thing we'll tackle, is mounting and terminating in the electrical panel. All right, we're here in the main shop. I needed to source a little strut for mounting my panel. Need 2 lengths of 48. Not exactly, just approximately. Have a nice work surface here. And a bandsaw already cut up, because this is still a construction zone. We relocate our office in a week to this location. It's being professionally cleaned right now, which is nice to see. Starting to smell good in there. And we relocate our operations here in 2 weeks. T minus. Okay, what I have here, 100 amp. Now this is kind of interesting. This is a 100 amp, 12240 single phase, indoor, main breaker electrical panel. I could be using a main lug panel. I could save a few bucks here, but I want a main breaker because I want a single point in the shop of being able to disconnect all power. That's not a code requirement. I could put that breaker, feeder breaker, just in the shop, and there will be one in there. But I want additional control. And when you buy it as a kit and an assembly, it's literally just a couple dollars more. An independent main breaker for this panel is about 60 bucks. Bought with the panel, I'm paying an extra 10. So it's a safety feature that's nice to have. Secondly, I've got 3-phase power here at the shop. The reason I'm using a single-phase panel is because twofold. One, we're going to be utilizing single-phase equipment for customer projects, and I'm going to utilize a AC to DC rectifier so that I can take AC power that I've got here in the shop, I can send it through the rectifier and have DC come out the other side. I then use that DC to simulate production from a solar array for the customer equipment so that we can commission it here in the shop, even if it's not sunny, even if there's snow on the ground, even if it's 2 degrees outside. We can simulate solar generation and commission the equipment and do it here in a controlled environment without reference to external parameters or limitations. Again, dedicated 240 volt circuit, AC power, to a rectifier, simulate DC for the purpose of being able to control our timing, optimize our labor, simulate real world scenarios, commission in a controlled environment, and then export that equipment that's already been set up, modularized, I just made that word up, together, batteries that have been wired in parallel or series, and then take it to the customer location and be spending more time in the shop, less time on location, and less time overall. That's just an advantage. So to do that, I don't want or need a 3-phase panel here. I just want single phase. Secondarily, at some point, this shop, Lord willing, is going to be completely off-grid. That means this shop initially will have a grid connection for the sake of our budget and all the ramp-up startup costs. 1, for opening a new division, and 2, rehabilitating and equipping an old building like this. But at some point, this shop will have its own solar array, its own battery system, and it will literally be completely independently powered by renewable energy and will not be connected to the grid. So our off-grid shop will be truly off-grid and will be a case in point, a test case, a proof for customers delivering their vehicles, trying to make a decision. We'll be able to exhibit what we're selling. So here it is. I'm gonna leave all the parts inside the box. Here's the panel of choice. I'm gonna go ahead and take a measurement from the mounting holes top, mounting holes bottom, so I can put my strut across the wall. Because what I don't really wanna do is mount it here. I'd have to drill some accessory holes in the panel. I don't want to mount it in the corner because then I violate working space. What I am going to do is hang strut. All right, there we go. Got our panel mounted. We've got wiring starting to come in the back of the panel. See, I took a moment to consider the overall aesthetic and functionality of how I was mounting the panel. And the finished surface is gonna lie right across the top of this strut. So the whole of the panel will be in front of the finished surface. I'm gonna bring my wiring through the back of the panel to keep it clean. So I've got metal abutting, my finished metal material abutting the panel, and it'll be a good, clean, finished look. Long term, inevitably, I'm going to need to bring more power out of this panel. I'm not going to utilize MC cable at that point because I'll have a good, clean, finished look. I'll utilize surface conduit and all of these available knockouts to bring power out of the panel. And at that point, I'll be able to mount strut above the panel to have a good, clean exit for power leaving the panel. So I think it's going to be clean up front, clean long term, bringing the power in the back. This is a sub panel. It's actually a sub of a sub of a sub panel. And right now I do need to separate grounds and neutrals. So before I get too far, I'm going to go ahead and install an independent ground bar that's common to the panel enclosure. And I am not going to install my bonding screw from my neutral, which is this terminal down the side and across the top. I'm not going to install a bonding screw from the neutral to the cabinet, the enclosure itself, because I want grounds and neutrals to be separated. I don't want neutral current on my grounding system creating a potential hazard. All right, so in this electrical panel, it is a sub-panel, as I stated. And in sub-panels, every panel after the first means of disconnect, grounds and neutrals must be separated, code requirement, safety requirement. So I'm going to be installing a ground bar right there. And I'm going back and forth about where I'm going to bring in my main feed from the shop. And I think I could do that. I think I'm actually going to put my lug at the top. So I'm going to put it right there. That's what I'm going to do. There it goes, there it stays. All right, let's take a look at how this works. It's requirement to use machine thread screw to secure to the panel housing. So I'm going to drill out. Drill out my ground bar. It's a lightweight metal, not a lot of difficulty there. I'm going to use this 832 machine thread screw, 8-32, and secure to one of these factory holes here. And I'm going to tap it out to an 832 as well. Real easy and gentle. I don't want to break off my tap. And you'll see that it's a drill tap in one. That's got a drill bit head and tapping threads. So now my first hole is ready for mounting. Second one's going to be slightly more involved because this is just a regular old ground bar. I could have purchased one that was specifically designed and sold with this panel, but my message didn't get to the warehouse somehow interpreted properly, which is okay. I keep these ground bars on hand because this is a real common issue and a common fix when you're doing service work, that grounds and neutrals have not been separated. How many home inspection reports have I seen where the home inspector has called out separation of grounds and neutrals as a requirement and a present violation? It's very, very common. So now I'm going to use a dummy bit just because I want to put the wear and tear on this bit. It's cheaper. I've got stock on them. I'm going to drill through my ground bar but not my panel. Oh, look at that. I may have goofed it up. It did align with a hole there. I had no idea it was lined up. Let's see if I drilled it out too large. I did. Okay. There's a mistake. Guys, I'm making mistakes all the time, but I'm overcoming every time. Oh, okay, here we go. All right, I'm gonna use a larger screw. I'm going to have to change my tap size from 832 to 1032 to accommodate that. So here's my little tap kit. Link in the description. 1024. Come on, where are you? Quarter 20. It's going to be that guy right there. 1032. That's what I'm looking for. Hopefully that's not too large of a hole. No, that felt real good, real good. And so now I use my 1032 screw. Oh, it's a good clean fit. Here's my main lug for my grounding bar. There it is. Now I have a place for all my grounds to land. I've got a massive neutral bar. And let me talk about this panel real quick. Take a look at this. The number of stabs, breaker stabs that I have in this panel is 2, 4, 6, 8, 11. 10. I counted that wrong somehow. 10 stabs per side. So this is a 2040. It's a 2040 because it's 20 breakers, 40 circuits. You know how I know it's a 40 circuit panel? This notch right down the center indicates to me that this panel has been listed, tested, and rated for tandem breakers. Those are piggybacks. That means 2 circuits for the space of 1 breaker. So this is a Square D Homeline 100 amp indoor single phase breaker panel. That's a 2040. I'm only going to have probably 11 or 12 circuits off the bat. I'll have plenty of room for growth, and that's always how I want to design my electrical system. I guarantee you one thing is true. At some point in the life of this panel, somebody's going to be adding power. They'll have additional requirements. Power requirements are always increasing, very seldom decreasing. So this is my separate ground bar that's just been installed. This is the mounting screw 1, mounting screw 2. That's my lug that's going to be properly sized and rated for my main incoming ground that's going to serve this bar and all of the green wires which will be connected at this point. I wanted, as I'm terminating these grounds, I'm noticing that some of these terminals are scarred. See how some of them are pure and clean and factory and look unused? And then you get about right here and there's scarring on this terminal, that terminal, this terminal, that terminal. That's evidence that somebody was either using the wrong tool or over torqued the terminal. Scarring on a terminal is a sign of inexperience. Now, I've done it before. but I do try to avoid it and recognize utilizing the right tool to the right torque is important for multiple reasons. I've seen these terminals shear off because over torquing was the scenario. And then what you can't do is you can't loosen the terminal, so you have to cut the wire off and abandon the terminal because literally the screw head has been sheared off by over torquing. And so scarring on a terminal is, to me, just a sign of inexperience. So one thing I don't do, and it's intentional, is I don't belabor making the panel overly beautiful. I'm more focused on anti-oxidation compounds, overcurrent protection, separations of grounds and neutrals, proper torquing, things of that nature to me are more important than getting these ground wires at the bottom to just be absolutely perfectly straight. I do a lot of service and repair work historically in small projects, so I'm in and out of a lot of different panels. And when something's beautiful and then you have to change it, a lot of times it's harder to change because there's zip ties around everything and you have to go clipping those zip ties out in order to extract wires and route new wires. And it's more time consuming to service. And sometimes all that zip tying of wires can actually create conductor bundling. So neat and tidy is helpful, but overdoing it, in my opinion, not helpful. I don't have any breakers today. I'll be landing those and wrapping up this panel on the next mini video. But I will go ahead and take care of my grounds and neutrals. This provisional red wire, that provides a future potential for an additional circuit without having to pull a new cable. I am gonna just tuck this out of the way, and you need to know your inspector. This could cause a failed inspection if your inspector does not want to see this kind of thing. And I don't need it to be that long. I can reach anywhere in the panel. So I'm going to shorten it up to the longest viable wire length, shortest viable wire length for any termination point in the panel. I'm going to tuck it here in the bottom, folding it back on itself out of the way. And I'll actually create a label when I'm labeling the panel that goes on that wire that labels it as spare for the destination. Now there's one little known code requirement that I'm going to satisfy here. And you might think this is kind of goofy. I could use zip ties, but this wire is right here and it's free. And the requirement is this: anytime you have multiple wires or cables entering a box, it must be clear what the association is between grounds and neutrals. Because I'm using a double MC connector on the back of the box, if I were to scramble these up, I wouldn't actually be able to tell which neutral went with which hot. And that's going to come into play with some significance when I land these on GFCI breakers. And I'll actually just pop the neutral out and plug it into the breaker and then put my pigtail to the neutral bus. So I do need to keep track of hots and neutrals, or else I'm going to be tripping out the GFCI. So I'm taking a small scrap of wire. Again, could use a zip tie, a twist tie, a label, a piece of electrical tape, but I'm just using a small scrap to maintain the association. And that, again, is also for servicing purposes. If I'm to come along here and service a circuit and I can't tell which neutral is associated with that circuit, I'm going to have to shut off multiple circuits in order to service the one of choice, because I can't risk opening a neutral on a circuit if it's not been de-energized. That can cause electronics to blow up. And here I'm going to give just a little extra, because it's such a short distance from wire entry to the breaker. I'm just going to create just the tiniest little extra right there for serviceability. A little bit more. Placeholder. Till those GFCI breakers come in, it's not final. Terminating breakers in our panel. We've made the conscious decision to use GFCI protection out here because of the potential and likelihood of water, and to locate the GFCI ground fault circuit interrupter, commonly nicknamed GFI, which is fine, protection at the breaker panel for ease and accessibility. What I've got here on my GFCI breaker is a grounding pigtail. The grounding pigtail needs to be connected to my neutral bar, also called neutral bus. One thing I'm going to be mindful of is I'm going to land all of my circuits right now in the midsection of this panel, giving room for future circuits in the bottom and coming in at the top. It's just going to keep it a little tidier long term, my opinion, not code. So I'm going to cut off the excess because I don't want all of this across 6, 8, 10 different breakers living in my panel. It's going to get too crowded. So I'm going to cut that short, not too short, I hope. These are like 50 bucks a pop. And strip it, land it to the terminal of choice, which is really just, again, a judgment call, an opinion. Yours is as good as mine. Slide it in there and bring it in. And then rock that breaker into place. And now I've got just a little tail of a neutral, not in my way. Breaker's terminated. And then I bring in neutral of choice. Woo! And there are 2 screws on the side of this breaker. The silver one is for the neutral, and it's located near the neutral that we just terminated. The brass screw, just like on a receptacle. Ooh. There we go. Things moving around a little bit. The brass screw is for my hot. So I'm going to connect my neutral terminal right there, that white screw, silver screw. And then I'm going to land my hot right up here. Cut it and strip it. And there's a hole right there to land it on. I'm going to loosen up my terminal screw. Slide that hot in there. I always do the tug test. You want to make sure that stuff is seated. All right. Then lay it in there. I'm moving it over just a little bit so I maintain access to that ground bar. And there you have it. This circuit's now fully terminated and GFCI protected. GFCI breakers located in the main panel. That way, if we've got a bank of outlets that trips out for good reason, because there's fault conditions, we know that the point at which it's tripped is here at the breaker, and we can easily turn it off and turn it back on again for a full reset of that circuit, as opposed to having tripped outlets and GFCIs hiding behind stored materials and having to search and move things and, you know, pump up pallets and pull them out of the way to access. We've got total access at all times here for all the critical moving parts and pieces.